Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Gambit number 3 of 4, cover dated February 1994. So this is quite a striking designy cover by Lee Weeks, and it features Julian of the Assassin's Guild in his monstrous form leaping on Gambit. And I like this little tiny detail of these kind of attention lines here, indicating that Gambit is alert to Julian pouncing on him, and of course he's ready there with his kinetically charged cards. Who this figure is revealed inside the issue itself, but if you've been paying attention to the designs, the different designs of the characters who are either in the Thieves Guild or the Assassin's Guild, this is clearly a member of the Thieves Guild. So let's open this one up to the splash page. Pretty cool splash page of Gambit entering this casino, but it's more than a casino. The club, Petit Chou, no more exclusive club, exists in Paris. So he's gone from New Orleans to Paris between issue 2 and the beginning here of issue 3. And let's look at the title of the story is The Benefactress. So that is this figure who has been supplying the Thieves and Assassins Guilds with the elixirs of life and power respectively. And here is Gambit in Paris to have a little meeting with her. So that's his first question here. Where can I find Candra, dealer? He asks the dealer at the table there. And the creative team: Howard Mackie, writer; Lee Weeks, penciler; Klaus, Janson, inker; colorist Steve Buccellato, and letterer Richard Starkings. And here we have a little credit for the creation of Gambit, credited to Chris Claremont and Jim Lee. And away we go. So Gambit flirts with this girl at the table, and she decides to go along with him, but then he's interrupted here by this heavy, who tells him the manager would like the pleasure of your company, sir. And Gambit says, love to oblige, mon ami, but as you can see, and the guy interrupts. Now, I like the design of the panel layouts on this page. In particular, I like Lee Weeks' choice here to have a borderless panel for this fourth panel on the page, but a little kind of designy background there. And then I really like this open panel, no background, no border, for the final panel of the page, where he's surrounded by these 5 heavies. And he charmingly kisses goodbye to the girl that he had picked up. And then he's taken to this lift and they go down stairs. Gambit here says, I thought we'd be going up to see Candra, but they take him down to the car park below the building, and here they are pulling out their guns. Gambit's not too perturbed, and they put on silencers onto the guns, and he says, too many of you to fight, plenty o' people have assumed I'd die in a place like this. Such is life, got to play the hand you're dealt with, eh? So every issue, Gambit's got to make a card reference, and so that's the one in this particular issue. So he asks for he has a last request, maybe a last smoke. So this guy here gives him his gold plated lighter, and Gambit's delighted. Nice gold, hey, expensive, and it takes a real good charge as he charges up with kinetic energy and sends it flying. So great artwork here by Lee Weeks and Klaus Janson. Really like the lighting choices on Gambit's face, and of course dynamic art to boot as well. So that charged cigarette lighter is going to go boom, as it does here, and this guy's reaching for his gun. Gambit kicks it out of his hand, steps on his hand, says he already had a light, lights up his cigarette, and kicks the guy in the jaw. Great work by Lee Weeks on this page. And now Gambit decides it's time to get into his working clothes. So here he gets into his familiar costume designed by Jim Lee, of course, and he is interrupted by none other than the tithe collector, who maybe some of us assumed had been killed in the previous issue, but he's alive, and he takes Gambit to see Kandra. Great anchor image here of Gambit on this page. Another one, no border, no background, so we get to really focus in on the figure of Gambit. Excellent work by Lee Weeks. So then the scene switches to New Orleans, to the Garden District home, Gambit's Garden District home. So he's bought a house there, a mansion. And in it, it's interesting. We see this character, Tant Mackie, and we last saw her, or first saw her, in Chris Claremont and Jim Lee's Uncanny X-Men 267. That's the Jam issue, produced by Homage Studios in a week. So it's Jim Lee's pencils, Wills Portacio finishes, and Scott Williams inks. At that particular issue, this character shows up for the first time, so she is here looking after Gambit's comatose wife, Belladonna, who's on the brink of death. As Tante Mackie says here, she says to Rogue, "You keep an eye on her, I'll be stopping in every day. Belle's daddy be trying all sorts of magic to keep her alive, but she's slipping away. I hope Remy can come through. There's only so much healing that she can do." So that's what Gambit's in Paris for. He's looking for the elixir of life that the Benefactress, Kandra, supplies to the Thieves Guild, and he wants to use it on the assassin, his wife Belladonna. So Rogue here is thinking about using her mutant powers to get into Belladonna's head and find out about her past history with Gambit, but she's hovering on the decision as to whether she'll do it or not. And then we switch to Paris and Gambit waking up in a very plush bed here, where he thinks to himself he could get used to this, very used to this. I love the detail of the shadow here of the bed. So the light source is over here coming through the window, and then you've got the shadow even of Gambit's big hairdo here on the carpet. That's really nicely done, that attention to detail by Weeks and Janson. Then of course, nothing's ever as simple as you'd expect. So Gambit gets up off the bed and he is attacked by the tithe collector once again, who's in the room with him. So we get a little bit of an action sequence here with Gambit bouncing around and charging up some object that he sends at the tithe collector. Now just notice this, right? So the tithe collector here clearly has hair. He's got a bunch of grey hair there on his head. But let's see him a little later on in the issue. And I like this panel too of the Eiffel Tower, of course, because, you know, if you're going to have any kind of shot of Paris that indicates that it is Paris, you got to work the Eiffel Tower in. But it's a nice version of it by Lee Weeks. And here we go. See what I said? Is it that his hair burnt off? Is that what happened? Is that what has happened? Because for the rest of the issue, he's got no hair, the tithe collector. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. So in any case, the tithe collector is getting ready to continue the fight with Gambit, but they're interrupted enough by Kandra. So here she is in this very, I don't know, like 70s kind of costume. Doesn't really look too except for the fact that it's a bit skimpy. It looks 90s, but otherwise it looks kind of 70s to me, indeed. And maybe that's deliberate because she is a long-lived mutant, and perhaps her kind of dated costume is a nod to that. In any case, what's revealed now is that the Benefactress, Kandra, and Gambit have a past. So Gambit says, "No, you're Kandra, the Benefactress. It has been a long time since you left Paris, Remy," she says. "Back then, neither of us ever really had much use for names, did we?" "No, indeed, Cherie," he says. "Names were the last thing we exchanged. It was a time, too true." And then they kiss. It looks like she kisses him, indeed. And I like this little detail of the charged up cards falling to the floor out of his hand as well. And then we're back in New Orleans, and Rogue's hand hovering over Belladonna, but she decides to forego deliberately touching her and stealing her memories. But then we're told, but Rogue's words are suddenly cut off as Belladonna reaches out in an involuntary reflex. The flesh-to-flesh contact Rogue chose to avoid is made. Memories that are not her own rush forward to engulf her mind. Within a moment, she is willingly lost. So it seems like these two things are happening at the same time. At least that's what the layout on the page suggests. And then we're back in Paris, and Kendra, it turns out, has telekinetic powers, rather like Jean Grey. And so she hits Gambit with a sonic bolt. And I like this DeLuca effect here, where he whirls around and somersaults down to the ground. And of course, he's unfazed, and he still has a cigarette in his hand, ready to take a drag, as he charms Kendra with praise that she's even more beautiful and as fiery as when he left. So she's not having any of that. I like this shot where we're looking from outside the building in. This is an interesting choice by Lee Weeks, where we see the characters framed in the two windows there, even with the detail of the curtains flying out at the side of the window frame. That's nicely done. So what's Gambit there for except for the elixir? She has it here, and she pops it down the front of her bustier. And so she says, "No, not so fast, my handsome one. Perhaps in exchange for services rendered, an arrangement could be made. Isn't that the way the Thieves Guild prefers to do business?" So what does she want him to do in exchange? Great artwork on this page. This is a really nice anchor image. I like the way he's just picking up the plate here. And of course, the idea is maybe that he wants it on hand as a weapon should things go wrong in this chat with Kendra. And I like this too, where she snaps her fingers. So I like the way that Lee Weeks has rendered that. It's difficult to draw something like that, someone snapping their finger, and it's nicely done. So in pops this character face down. So who could it be? Remember, as I said, in relation to the cover, dressed in the garb of the Thieves Guild. So Kendra picks up his head, and it turns out to be Remy's, Gambit's not stepfather, but adopted father, or adoptive father. So Kendra wants him to kill his adoptive father, and of course Gambit's not going to have any of that. So he says he'll kill her first, and then they're interrupted by this blast, and who or what is that? We'll find out in subsequent pages. And then we're back in New Orleans, and I really like this page, this kind of collage of Belladonna's memories of her time with Gambit on the river, and then here kissing in the woods. And Rogue is getting to experience all of this through Belladonna's memories, the thing that she wants and that she can't have because of her mutant powers. And so we pick up with the narrative captions here. Another lifetime of memories Rogue is loath to let pass away, painful memories of what once was and what can never be hers. So she is deeply upset by that and by what she's done as she sees it. I really love this kind of shot, this 3/4 profile upshot of a face. Difficult to do, and Lee Weeks does it really, really well. So then we're back in Paris, and we have the explanation of what that blast was in Kendra's apartment. And it turns out to be Julien Bourdreau, that is Belladonna's brother, homicidal brother. Well, he is a member of the Assassin's Guild, a rogue member, and he's got his team with him here. And of course, he's on the attack, and Kendra orders the tithe collector to deal with Julien. So they've previously tussled, where Julien got the better of the tithe collector, and he gets the better of him again this time, and he gets his hands around Kendra's neck. And this is interesting what he says here. He says, I'll come after you and all your kind, the externals. I'll kill you all for what you've turned me into. So this kind of monstrous appearance that he has with the three-fingered claws on his hands, it all seems to have something to do with something done to him by Kandra and the externals rather. And then we have Gambit intervening to save Kandra with his bow staff. Great image here by Lee Weeks, of course. And then we've got a round 2 between Julian and Gambit. Gambit getting the better of him, more or less. But Julian, as he's striking out at Gambit, Gambit's adoptive father intervenes and gets slashed in the guts, it seems, which is not good. So Gambit's taken aback by that. And then he's enraged and he goes to town on Julian's flunkies here, dealing with them quite easily, more or less. That's a great anchor image here of Gambit leaping into action. Great work by Lee Weeks and Klaus Janson. And he's charging up this little statuette, ready to use it against Julian. But Julian is knocked out by a psi bolt delivered by Kandra. And she jokes about how she didn't want Gambit killing him so that he'd stain her Persian carpet. But clearly Julian hasn't been killed. He's still alive, and we'll see him again in the final issue. So then Gambit turns on the charm once again. He kisses Kandra, but what's he really up to? So she pushes him away and says, "Get out of my sight, thief, before I come to my senses and have you killed." And he says, "Don't have to tell me twice." Picks up his adoptive father and says, me and my daddy will be heading back to New Orleans, settle up the rest of the family business. Thanks to you. Until we meet again, Kandra. So he's heading off and she's allowing him to leave. And then once he's gone, she says to the tithe collector, "The guilds will be broken. Julian, who I bruised but did not kill, will be my wild card. He'll keep me and my fellow externals on our toes. Oh, an end to the boredom that comes with long life. And now I can begin consolidating my power base anew." Okay, so she's got her grand plan. And then she realizes when she checks her bustier that the elixir of life is gone. So Gambit back here nabbed that elixir of life with his dexterous, agile fingers without her even realizing it. And he's gone and away. And so she is absolutely apoplectic with rage. She wants him, his family, his mutant girlfriend, his wife, all dead. So that's our cliffhanger for the final issue of the 4-issue limited series. Well, I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Gambit number 3. If you did, please like the video in YouTube. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.